Hi, good morning. We're back. Glad to be here again in this space that allows us to meet so many wonderful people and do so many interesting things like today's podcast. Um, we are joined with Karine, who's visiting us from Los Angeles, and of course, Ala and myself, who are the host
of this wonderful podcast.
of this wonderful.
Hopefully it's wonderful. Hopefully everyone is watching.
Absolutely. We hope you enjoy today's. It's going to be quite unique. We're in a completely different setting. We are at the hotel where Karine is staying at, and that just makes it interesting.
So if you hear the noise,
Yeah,
that's the Santana Street.
Exactly.
That's the, Lindora.
exactly. So I don't know. Ala, I don't know if you want to start today, if you have any specific questions for Karine, or if I should go ahead and start.
I'm meeting Karine. I met her half an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the most interesting thing when you met a person and we kind of attracting people that have very interesting background.
Yeah.
And each person, each human being have a story, of course, but when this story touches different cultures, different backgrounds, different histories, it's very unique. It's very rich. So sometimes you don't know where to start. And I relate to that because sometimes people ask me, where? So, well, what are you doing here in Costa Rica? Or, who are you? I don't know where to start. I don't know whether to start from my own personal history, how I came here, or what I do. Because sometimes we relate people not what they are, what do they do. So that's okay. What should I say? I'm Russian. I came here. I'm chemical engineer. I'm writer. So and we usually do so many things. So tell about you.
Yes,
What's
please.
the most? If someone asks you, who are you?
Oh, that's my book.
In very few words,
Okay.
what would you say?
Okay. Hi, I'm Karine Armen. I live in Los Angeles. First of all, I want to thank you, both of you, for making time, coming, visiting me, having this podcast. I'm honored. Big thank you. Spasiba,
No, thank
gracias.
No, thank you for being here.
I'm Armenian from Iran, and my dad was born in Ukraine, and my dad, the Armenian genocide, all these stories, and I live in Los Angeles, but I still kept my multicultural identity, so I want to write about cultural identity. So, I guess I do my own writing, journalism, photography, I'm a teacher, social work, so my passion is to write, publish photography, writing. But right now, I think you want to talk about my mom's book.
Yeah, well, I want to know personally.
Who you are?
Yeah, how.
Besides all this photography and writing, who you really are. So who Karine is.
That's a secret.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a
a lot.
Because in
secret.
this podcast, when we started it, we decided in each topic, because there's a lot of podcasts, we're going to go deeper.
Yeah,
We like to go deep
we like to
inside
go-
us,
yeah.
inside topics, and inside people. Because we know,
I could say for one thing, I don't talk to normal people.
Eccentric people.
So,
Interesting.
so one of the things that before even knowing Karine, it's just her brother started describing her. He's like, she likes to travel alone. She's a vegetarian. She likes to write, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I want to meet her, And it wasn't short of that, because when we met for the first time, it was like we already knew each other, even though we just met. And
Well,
then that,
maybe it really
yeah, that's when you realize,
souls connect.
yes, that's when you realize that there's a deeper meaning to meeting people. People just don't come into our life randomly, and they don't come into our life just because, and they don't come into our life. They come to, you know, either they come to give us a lesson, they come to teach us something, or vice versa. There's an exchange there. So for me, it's been that since day one with Karine, and then of course, what we want to get into and what I want to get into personally is the hard work that she's been through, translating her mother's work. Like Allah and I both know how difficult it is, when things are written in a certain language, handwritten, right? Then, not only handwritten in a certain language, then the topic, right?
Translate,
Translation.
it's not
You
easy.
have to switch your brain
Yes.
like a channel, thinking in different languages, especially Iranian and
Yeah.
Arabic, different directions,
No,
left to right, right to left.
especially when the languages are culturally so apart.
Exactly.
Because, for example, for me, when I wrote the book about very Costa Rican, there were a lot of language, Costa Rican language. It was very easy. I started to translate it to English. It was so hard
Yes.
Yeah.
because I needed not only translate, I wanted to transmit what I wanted to say. So translation is not easy. It's not just put one language from one language to another. You want to transmit what you want to say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom? I know that you can talk hours about her, but if you were to give us like a brief description of who she was, how would you describe her?
My mom, Bejik, that was her name.
Bejik.
She was a caretaker just because of her situation. Because my grandmother survived the genocide, walked through Iraq to Iran. She got married young. So my grandma had mental issues. Now we say post-traumatic syndrome. Those days we didn't have a name. They just like crazy.
Yeah.
So my mom, she became the mom of the family, taking care of her younger brother, sister, caretaker. So that was in her. Even later, when she got married, had 4 kids, she was like this social worker without a degree, without even a high school degree. She helped the whole neighborhood. Armenian kids, Assyrians, they all came to our backyard. She cooked for everyone. As soon as low income, she ran. She took us to the bad neighborhoods in Tehran. She's like, let's go visit our nanny or housemaid, whatever. We're like, nobody goes there. We went. We sat on the floor. There were no chairs. Like, so she didn't have attitude. She said, I don't want jewelry. My children are my diamonds, whatever. So I guess I got that from her. Simple life. She was very simple, always there to take care of people, collect money and items like rice, things to give to low-income people. Wow. So later, I became a social worker. So, like everything. So I guess it was in me. I learned from her. Of course, when you are young, you don't get along, right? But later, when I started, after she died very young, 56 from cancer, then when I started, I wanted to publish her work. I was just crying. So then I appreciate later, after she died, I appreciate her work. I became closer. I understand her sayings. Things she said 50 years ago, nobody understood. She was way ahead of her time. And then also lots of depression in her family. So she started reading women's magazines, self-help books. She went to groups, which was forbidden after the revolution in Iran. No groups, and not like something. But then when she came to Los Angeles, Glendale, she stayed for a year and a half. she started writing in Farsi. We're Armenian, but she wrote in Iranian language. She got published. She got so excited. So every week she published. People were calling my house. She gave my phone number in the magazine. They were asking, like, what do I do with my children? What do I do? So she became this social worker. People were calling her. And that was her vision. She wanted to stay. She wanted to open a center for women, children, or for elderly. Those days. I was like, no, you can't do it. You need a license. You need this. You need that. But she did it, and people listened to her. They liked her articles.
Seems like her dreams were bigger than her limitations.
Exactly.
That's what sometimes we need to do, like dream without limitations.
Actually, I was going to ask you, Ala, because I know that you're from Russia, and I know that even though the regimes were completely different, because in Iran they didn't have a socialist regime. But I always, as a Westerner, because I consider myself Westerner, I always see like how somehow these regimes affect people for the good, because there's always a positive impact in people's lives who are raised in different regimes. But is the topic of depression something that you can relate to in Russia?
Yes.
I would like to know that.
Yes, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just was about to say,
Mhm.
yesterday I was working in the next chapter of my book, one of the chapters. I was writing about my grandma. She was sick all the time. Since I remember her, she was always in bed. And receiving some injections from my grandfather and so on. And I asked when I was small, little, I always asked, what's wrong with my grandma? And now, when I'm analyzing, when I'm writing about that, I'm almost sure because that she has some post-traumatic depression or something like that. Because the only thing she told me, they never talked about those, because they were Ukrainians, those times when there were genocide in Ukraine and times of Stalin.
Oh, that's
And before. So they never talked about that. And then they've been avoiding some topics as well. So I'm writing in my book that I almost can guess that she has
Depression.
depression, but she never could. The way she handled that, she went inside.
Yeah.
Her mom was brave enough to go outside.
Exactly.
My grandmother, she went inside.
Exactly, because her mom is a reflection of me that I'm currently in the topic of health, in the health related field. Her mom's topic is an up-to-date 2024 topic where people have finally understood the relationship between our emotions and our physical bodies. Like even just 20 years ago, everybody was just looking at it like two separate things, right? And the fact that your mom was able to capture that, put those thoughts in writing, is, to me, that's fascinating. Like on one of the pages that I'm just reading here, and it's in Spanish, it's talking about the positive and negative channels. You know, positive and negative channels. Our emotions are the product of our thoughts, which are related to those channels. So I read this and I'm like, you know,
they have the English
She was
version.
way
Ahead of her time. Yes. Honestly, the language going back to translation and language, Iranian language is really, really deep, poetic language. Sufis. And they have sayings about all this. Your body, Western philosophy.
Rumi is a
Bravo,
famous
Rumi. Like your body and everything is together.
Yes.
Western mentality, body.
Yes.
Yes.
And now
Yes.
they're
That's
like,
the way why
oh,
Western medicine it's so
it's so bad.
reproductive.
Now they're like
Yes.
psychosomatic.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I studied social work
Yeah.
also. I saw the first time the word psychosomatic, like if you're angry, you're coming, your head
Yeah.
hurts. Hello,
Yeah.
Rumi.
Rumi
Sufi
said-
said that too.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
It's all connected, of course.
Yes.
Exactly.
Not separate bodies.
But it was harder to translate because Iranian language is poetic. It's
Yes.
Sufi language. English, less
dry.
adjectives.
It's dry.
Adjectives.
Absolutely.
And my friend who helped me edit the Spanish version of this book, I said, you know, English, even my Spanish is okay, but like, even if I don't understand, I listen to Neruda or Isabel Allende in Spanish, it sounds poetic. Anyway, so translation is not just language, it's the. And I started translating this from Farsi to English. I was doing such a fast job. I'm like, how can I translate so fast? How am I doing it so fast? I panicked. I stopped for another year.
Yeah.
But then I talked to my brother who's a poet. I said, am I doing a good job? I can't translate word to word. She said, don't worry, the main message. So I try to stay to the main message as American, as thinking in English,
Yeah.
rather
You
than
can
word to
translate
word.
word to word.
Exactly. So that was the main message.
We could definitely be here all morning talking because we definitely
Fascinating.
can learn a lot from Karine and our stories combined here. But just to bring it to a closure for the sakes of time, because we do like to keep our podcast within a certain time frame for our listeners and viewers. Karine, this book that you translated to Spanish, it's also in English, right? And it's also on your blog,
On my blog.
right? So
Photokarine.com.
photo,
Yeah, we'll put on the information.
we're going to
and-
put
yeah,
that other
in the description of the-
information in the description. But we want to thank you for taking the time. I know you had a late flight and we almost didn't do the recording today, but I'm glad we did. And of course, well, Allah for always being part of this journey with me, which has become part of our lifestyle now, right? Interviewing just people who shine some light into our lives.
Right. Yes, and the most fascinating thing since we started this podcast, we never plan anything.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of my part of what I teach, and transmit, that our intuition connects us
Yeah.
to everything that has to come to our lives.
Yes.
So all these amazing people,
Yes.
they just appear.
Yeah.
We don't plan anything.
Yeah.
We don't look for people. It just
It just happens. And
just
that's the magic. And we hope you
magic.
feel that
magic.
wherever you are in the world.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
honored. I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, that was amazing.